All right, here we go. This is Royce with Millionaire Mentor Network, and this is our Millionaire Mentor podcast. And Allison, why don't you introduce yourself and tell a little bit about yourself so our audience knows who you are and what you do.
Sure. Thank you so much for having me. I'm Alison Gerlach. I also have a podcast called The Unapologetic Capitalist, where we talk about building value in your venture. My background is I am formerly a strategic management consultant with Booz Allen and Hamilton, and then I went on to go in the venture world, start companies. When I did my graduate work at MIT, I focused on optimizing the business startup growth and funding process. And I have started companies of my own. I have helped others start companies. I have been a venture capital investor. I've been a private equity investor. And now I spend most of my time advising early stage and mid stage companies as well as investors on how to allocate their capital.
Awesome, awesome. Very, very important stuff. Um, well, that's good. Well, today we're going to be talking about optimizing business startup and the growth process of having a startup business. And we're going to be going over how to build a successful business plan, how to build an early stage effective team, as well as who to pitch and how to pitch investors. We're going to be going over some seriously really, really good stuff. And Allison, you have a lot of great knowledge, very, very content rich knowledge that you have is incredible. Um, so let's go ahead and start off with how to build a successful business plan. What do you advise for people that are doing a startup? How to put together a really good business plan?
There's a couple of things that are pretty important about a business plan. I think one is to recognize that it is important to have a business plan. I think a lot of folks out there have seen or have heard of stories of, well, this guy just went by instinct, this guy did that and he did well or she did well. And you hear stories, and I think there's some people out there who don't think that, or have convinced themselves they don't need to put the work in to build a business plan, because a business plan is a significant amount of work. It takes a lot of thinking. But my great advocacy for having a business plan is that, yes, there are people out there who can get lucky without one. But if you don't have one, that's what you're depending on. You are depending on being 100% lucky. And there's a lot of stuff out there that you are still going to need luck. Luck, no matter what you do, is still going to play a substantial role in the outcome of whether or not you're financially successful. However, if you have a truly excellent business plan, you really won't have to depend nearly as much on luck to be successful, and you'll be so much more prepared so that you don't have to depend on not just luck, but circumstances sort of fall in your way. You will be prepared for a myriad of circumstances that you can't control because you've optimized all those things that you can. So I'm a huge advocate of the business plan in terms of needing one. And if you've done it well, you've really laid out a blueprint for how to optimally run your business. So it is a lot of work, but it is so worth it. And the key part of the business plan, I think that is a big misnomer, is that a lot of people think a business plan is just to pitch investors. And while it is important when you are pitching investors to have a very excellent business plan, the real key to having a business plan is, one, as I just said, to have a really excellent blueprint for how to build and run your business. But the real person you need to convince that this is a good opportunity is yourself. And the best business plans are written as a complete devil's advocate. You can be, it's really easy to be a cheerleader and to say, hey, I've got this product, lots of people are going to love it, it's going to go viral on social media, and I make millions of dollars. Sure, that's a possibility. The good business plans are the ones that are convincing you to do anything else on this planet but build this business. Because it's going to be hard, it's going to take a lot of work, it's going to take blood, sweat, and tears. So you should really build a business plan to convince yourself to do anything else. And if at the end of that process you think to yourself, gosh, I've now done a business plan, how could I possibly not give this business a chance? Then you know you've got something.
Gotcha. Now, I know there's many components to a business plan, but what would you say are the most important components to a business plan that will help the business to become more successful?
I think the business plan is usually in two parts. The first part is usually the strategy, and then the second part are the tactics that show how you're going to implement that strategy. So the really important work that needs to be done for your business and your business plan is to answer the questions why and who. Why am I starting this business? Why this opportunity? Why now? And usually the answer should be incredibly simple. The answer should be to make a significant amount of money, to generate significant long-term value. And I keep using the word significant because it's not enough to prove that a business can turn a profit. You have to show that it's going to be an opportunity that's going to worth foregoing all other opportunities for your time and investment for this one. So why you're doing it needs to be because this is an amazing opportunity that is big and growing. And the next question is who? Who am I building it for? Who are the customers? Who are the competitors? Who are the people inside my company I need to the team that is the right one to build this? There's government regulations out there. You've got vendors, you've got retailers, you've got distributors. If you can answer all the who's and their stake in it, their power in it, their money in it, how the money flows amongst them, if you can answer the why and the who really well, then all the other tactical questions like what, how, when will answer themselves.
Gotcha. That makes total sense. And let's talk a little bit about how important the marketing aspect of the business plan is and how important it is to do market research in regard to your niche of whatever startup business you have.
I'm glad you brought it up as market research because that's a very different thing than marketing. And I can't tell you how many early stage companies that I get pitched from or look at business plans, and it really is just a marketing plan. And when I look at business plans or when I'm taught how to write a business plan, marketing is really a tactic. So out of the chapters of a business plan, it's one of the last. But market research, that's a who question. And that really does need to be done up front. And part of the reason why market research or marketing plan needs to be done so late in a business plan is because you need to describe your market so well. Who are you actually selling to? Who is actually paying for the product? A lot of times, who writes the check to you is not the same person that actually uses the product you're selling. And you need to know how all those people behave, and that's for market research. The biggest, challenge I think a lot of early stage companies face is they want to immediately do a survey. And it's easy to do a survey. There's a lot of online tools to do surveys. But if you do a survey early on, you're going to be collecting a lot of data that has absolutely no bearing on what your marketing plan should be. Survey is something you should do much later in the process. Early on, you need to really listen to your customers. You need to know from them and their perspective, what is their great marketplace pain? What ails them? What bothers them? What costs them money? And again, from their perspective. So if you do a survey too early, you're giving your perspective. You're giving your language. You need to sit back and listen. And I often advise early stage companies, I'll say, go out, or listen to at least 50 customers, at least. And you might find out after only listening to 10 or 20 that you might actually have the wrong core customer. You'll have figured that out early on because by the time you do a survey, you need to know exactly who your customer is, exactly what their greatest pain is, and exactly the language they use and they find compelling before you even think about how you're going to market to them.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah, the market research information is just so important, and you're absolutely right. Do the survey afterwards, because get to understand and know your prospective client and your customer before you start putting your plan together, before you start doing your surveys and stuff like that. So, like you said, you can put your marketing plan together based on their true wants and needs, how they think, what makes them buy, what's their trigger points, etc.
And the old adage is right, which is the customer is always right. Their perspective is the one that matters. And I've seen a lot of stubborn entrepreneurs who feel that their product is so disruptive that they need to tell the customer what's right. And it's definitely a different tack to go, but I can assure you that far more companies have been successful because they listened and understood the perspective of their customer and used the language that was compelling to them, not what you were telling them they should be compelled by.
Exactly, and that that type of tactic usually leads to buyer's remorse, which tends to not build a long-term supply of customers. They kind of peter out pretty quickly from that type of sales tactic. So you're right.
Absolutely, and that's where a lot of marketing plans go wrong. They talk about getting a customer rather than talk about generating many long-term loyal repeat customers, which is what really builds value. That's how an investor is going to consider the value the company has to generate, is going to be based on the number of loyal, frequent use customers you can generate, not just the guy you can get once.
Right. Okay, so let's move on to the next one. But that was very insightful. Thank you very much. I do believe that's going to be very helpful for our listeners. So for our second one, I wanted to go into how to build an early stage effective team, and we kind of briefly went over this before, but kind of go over again what you were talking about, the importance of the team building, how you don't necessarily have to do it in the very beginning, but whereabouts in the process of putting together your startup for your business plan and all that stuff, whereabouts within that range should you start focusing on building your team?
The team aspect is, when I talk about answering the why and the who, it is certainly an exceedingly important who is the team. And the right team, certainly in a business plan, can overcome a lot of flaws. If you have a really just exceptional team, a lot of investors will forego holes in the technology, problems in the organizational process or product or things like that, if the team is that excellent. The flip side is also true, that if your team is not excellent, everything else could be perfect, and they might still look and say, boy, this isn't the team to do it. So a team can make you, and a team can break you. And I think there's a lot of pressure. You're going to get this pressure from investors, from professors, from mentors, to surround yourself with a team early on. I have actually not ever advocated that. And the first company that I started right out of business school, I did not have partners. And I did get a lot of pressure about, well, who's your team? Who's your head of sales? Who's your head of technology? Who's your head of this? And I sort of pointed, like, right now, that's all me. And a lot of folks really said, but you have to have these people. And I remember thinking, I really wasn't sure at that early stage who those people were. I had a lot of well-meaning investor types sort of throw me names and people that would add a lot of gravitas to my team. And the one story that I recall, and this is back in the late 90s, is trying to find someone for sales, because that really was such a key area, because the product had been developed and we really needed to prove that it could sell. So early on, I had, again, a lot of well-meaning folks send me resumes of these guys who were really excellent in sales, 10 years sales in this arena, 10 plus years sales in this arena. They would really be able to sell. What I found, however, in when I was doing the selling myself, was that even though I quickly realized I was not the best person to do the job, one thing I realized was the sales for for this particular product were to HR administrators, HR professionals in large companies. So I remember when I finally did say, I got to get a salesperson, I actually called a recruiter for hiring HR executives. And the person said to me, "You're this tiny little company. You don't need an HR person." I said, "Because I don't need them for HR. I need them for sales." And I hired a person who had never done a day of sales in her life, but she was an almost 20-year executive at a Fortune 100 company that happened to be looking for some new opportunity. And she had enrollment up in our product in less than 6 weeks from a couple hundred to 300,000.
Wow.
Because of her Rolodex, her relationships. And this was probably, I hired her, I would say, 12 to 18 months after I had launched the company. Many, many months, 10 plus months after I had been hearing, you have to hire this person, you have to bring this person on. But had I not been patient and known exactly what I need to hire, I for sure would have hired the wrong person.
And that's
the bullying atmosphere sometimes you can get. Like, it's well intended, but you should never feel forced to bring somebody on just for window dressing.
Yeah.
I have made those hires, and I can tell you not a single one ever turned out well. But the CEOs who do every job in the company and then spend the rest of their time giving those jobs away to people who can do it better than they can, those are the teams that are going to be built with intention of actually building value for the company rather than just showing, hey, look, we're putting together the prettiest horse to back in this dog and pony show.
Yeah. And that's also going to be helpful when you go to pitch investors, because investors want to know that you're not trying to wear all the hats. Investors are very reluctant to give money to people who are the CEO, the president, the chairman, the sales guy, the manager. They're going to look at that and be like, no, this isn't going to work out. This isn't a team. This isn't a system,
But it's also a very good thing to ask help for from an investor. You shouldn't just say, hey, I'm a one-person team and I can do it all, because nobody really believes that. And it is, I do really believe that it is important to be reasonably transparent and say, if you're raising money, to say, I'm also raising these things with the money. I need to find team members, and I would like an investor's help to do that.
Yes. And the difference between, for those who aren't too familiar with the difference between a venture capitalist and an angel investor, is venture capitalists tend to have money invested in many different types of things, so they really don't have time to get their hands dirty. Whereas opposed to an angel investor, they tend to like to put, if they're putting money in the game, they may have knowledge and experience that they want to help make that business successful as well, and they're more likely to help out with the business, like you were saying. If you do need somebody to help you out in regards to an investor, angel investors are very good for that.
Although I could certainly say the argument goes the other way as well. Angel investors are usually different stage of the company investor. So if you want your first dollars, I would say the first dollars should be your SFF money, which are friends, families, and fools, that you've gone around to say, hey, back me up, invest in me, invest in this. And of course, that should be a low hurdle because they are either friends, your family, or fools that they come in. When then you need to raise more substantial money, that could be 20,000, could be 100,000, but you're still putting together a prototype, or you may just have a prototype. It's the stage of the company that you're in as to whether or not an angel investor is right over a venture capital investor. So the early stage, the prototype stage, you're raising maybe less than $1 million. That's usually where an angel investor is best. And you can find angels of a whole different, or a whole array. Some are going to be, real industry experts that are going to help you because they know this guy and they have this buddy and they know the industry well and can hook you up. Venture capitalists, who are usually later stage, once you've proven your concept, you have some proof of profitability, you have, a valuation of your company that can sustain taking on $2-5 million investment. Venture capitalists are going to be very hooked up too. And venture capitalists are going to be, well, they generally manage portfolios. Angel investors sometimes do as well. There's also a term in the angel investment world called a meddling angel. Sometimes you get an angel who is looking to dive into something, and if you're not looking for that, they're just going to be really bothersome and meddlesome. And you're going to find yourself with someone who's giving you $25,000, and 6 months later you're thinking, I'd give him $50,000 just to go away. So you've got to sort of look out on both ends in terms of involvement. And whether you go to an angel or a venture capital, well, the similar thing is you should be getting more than just cash, because equity is expensive money. And so you should get some expertise, sales channels, help with management team, all those things with the money. But it's also the amount of money you're raising and the stage your company is in. Venture capital is a later stage investment than an angel investor would be.
And I'm glad you brought that up to help to let people know the difference and what stages you can bring those different types of investors in on. Okay, so let's go on to the next one I wanted to go into is who to pitch. Speaking about investors, who to pitch and how to pitch investors. So, of course, who to pitch is going to depend on your industry, your market, your niche, and things in that regard. But you're very insightful on this subject. So, kind of fill us in on a little bit about your experience and the outcomes.
The who to pitch, the real truth of the matter is you should pitch anyone who's willing to take a meeting with you.
There you go.
I mean, I've certainly been asked that when I speak and lecture. I'll get asked, why did you take this job? And I'll say, it was the one I got offered. Why did you go with this investment? It was the one that was available. So at the end of the day, we'd like to believe that we have that much control and choice. And if you do have a choice of investors to go to, then my heartiest congratulations. That is rare air. So first and foremost, you go to the investors that will meet with you. But to meet with the right investors, really you have to know what truly the honest answer to what stage is your business in. If your business is very early stage, you've not taken any institutional monies, you really are an early seed stage investor. And there are a lot of venture capitalists out there that will claim to be seed stage investors. Very few of them are. They really have they're going to say, well, who invested you to this point? Do you have a working prototype? And seed stage often means that you really are still at the prototype stage, that you're still working with a beta group of customers. And really, once you go to institutions, you really do need to have enough enough of a company to sink your teeth into that can support the valuations that the investors are going to want to see. And the truth of the matter is, investors look at almost every investment backwards. You're going to look at the investment and say, well, I need $100,000 or I need $1 million and I need it for these three things. And by the way, do not ever raise money for working capital or to pay people. And I know there's some crossover in what those things are. No investor wants to invest in just getting people paid and just paying to run the company. Investors want to see that you're running the company just fine without their money, but their money will accelerate your growth and opportunity. So they want to see, hey, we need investment to invest in automation so we can scale. Investing in scalability, that is something that's interesting to investors. But the investment needs to be something that they can look at and say, all right, they're still going to survive if they never get this money. However, with this money, they can really leapfrog the competition and take advantage of an opportunity that's here now where their organic growth isn't going to get them there. And investors are going to look at the investment and say, well, we're probably going to want to take 20 to 40% of the company if you're a venture capitalist. And they're going to say, well, if we give them $1 million, then for 20 to 40% of the company, and then they will back the valuation is just going to be a calculation of that. 1 million equaling 20% of the company gives you a valuation. Where they also need to look at and say, how can we make our 1 million possibly worth 10 million in 3 to 5 years? Is that possible? Do we see that happening? That's how they're going to look at the investment. And they're doing that before they've ever heard one word about your company. So an angel investor, they're going to have a similar thought that they're not going to want to take too huge of, most angels are going to want less than 20%, probably less than 10. They're going to give you a little bit of money, hopefully get you to a place where you're going to get to whatever next milestone that investment is intended to get you. And the due diligence process they're going to do is it's going to be a little more informal, and probably a lot more on the team and the people they're working with than on the industry and the risks that the industry bears.
Gotcha. Well, that's very, very insightful, Allison. That was great. Hopefully,
and just to bring in a couple of examples, just to really tell you how important it is to be raising the right amount of money from the right people. I recently did advise a company. They came to me saying, boy, we keep getting all these meetings with all these venture capital firms. They seem to love us, but not a single one has funded us. Why? And I asked them, and they said, can we send you our business plan? Can you look and see where it's flawed? And I actually never even needed to look at their business plan to see why they weren't getting the response. They were raising about $2.5 million, which is a venture capital amount of money. However, their company and the stage they were in was so early stage that it was going to be difficult for them to even say that their entire company was worth $2 million. And yet they were raising that for part of their company. You see where an investor's it's just not going to be a fit at all.
Yeah.
And I myself have been pitched. I remember a few years back, an early stage company, somebody came and said, well, they're raising $1 million. And they did need $1 million for what they wanted to do. However, currently, they were valuing their company at about $250,000, which I also thought was fair based on the numbers they presented. So I actually said, okay, can I just give you $250,000 and get 100% of the company? And they started looking at me and go, what are you talking about? I said, well, you're asking for $1 million for 40%. But right now you're only worth $250,000, so I can get 100% for $250,000. Doesn't that seem to be a better deal?
Well, that was the logic. That was the logical decision there. Allison, you are awesome, and now you offer strategic management consulting, leadership management, conflict mitigation, M&A advisory, and you do lectures and workshops. Tell us a little bit more about how you can help some of these entrepreneurs out that are looking to really be successful.
Absolutely. I do enjoy very much helping early stage companies, certainly with business plan strategy, funding strategy, and as we started off talking about, optimal building and growth. They can certainly find out more about me at my website, which is unapologeticcapitalist.com. To have some real how-to resources, I have 2 episodes that might be really helpful. Episode number 4 of mine is on writing an optimal business plan. So you can just put in unapologeticcapitalist.com/4, the number. And number 6 is on how to pitch to investors.
And then
there's some later on episodes in the 40s that actually do talk about what the view is like from the venture capitalist seat. How do you assess what venture you're going to? And my entire library of podcasts are available. Unapologeticcapitalist.com/iTunes. And you can look at all of them.
Okay, yeah, that's what I was going to mention. This is all on your radio show, your podcast show.
Yes, and in addition, it's very easy to reach out with questions. Again, via my website, there's a little contact. There's a place that says Ask Alison. And I am happy to answer any questions without charge. I'm happy to meet with any company without charge for my time to at least send them on the right path or help them find resources.
Awesome. And Allison, now you have a book.
I have a book that I've been working on, yes.
Yes, and it's pretty much done. But what's it going to be called, and when abouts do you think it'll be available? I know you can't say when exactly, but I am actually looking forward to your book coming out.
Oh, well, I appreciate that.
So,
The book, my guess is it's going to be titled The Unapologetic Capitalist. And it's going to basically talk about, in a very transparent way, of how to optimally build a company and run a company, where it does get into a lot of that, valuation, conflict negotiation, and really getting yourself to an exit that is of substantial value. And I think more than that, I mean, all of this that we talk about, I think the most important thing is you got to make sure you're on the right ride, that this is the right path that you're on to give you the best chance at getting you to that great outcome you're hoping for. Because we're not going to be able to control whether or not somebody buys our company for hundreds of millions of dollars. But we can control making sure we're on the best path to give us our best chance at getting there.
right, right, and that's really it is when it comes down to it, it is about an exit strategy, because the company name can live forever as long as the right people are running it. But eventually, you do need to retire and either pass the company down to your legacy, your kids or family, or just sell it and retire and live happy and have fun. Well, Allison, thank
Right.
you.
Well, and that's actually the key of even writing a business plan. The first thing I always say is you've got to have your optimal exit. Because while that might change with circumstances, if you don't have the exit you want, how can you possibly know you're going in the right direction?
Right, right. It's true. Well, Allison, thank you so much for coming on the show. I'm so glad that you took the time out to talk to the listeners. This information is going to be absolutely very, very helpful, I think, to the listeners and to all those budding entrepreneurs out there that are really looking to do something and be successful at it. Because back when I first got started with my first business, like probably 20 years ago or so, I didn't have access to podcast shows and experts like yourself. I had to go to a library and, and read every single book that I could, and a lot of it was very confusing and stuff like that until eventually, you find business coaches and stuff like that. But so thank you very much.
And there's nothing more valuable than finding the right mentors.
That's exactly, finding the right mentor is key. That's very, very true. All right, Allison. Well, we'll probably have you on the show again. I'm sure we're going to get some really good responses and stuff like that. So, in the meantime, thank you, everybody for listening. Allison, don't go away yet. But thank you, everybody, for listening to Nick Royce here on the Millionaire Mentor podcast, and we'll be back with another episode of more exciting information on how to be successful in your business. Talk to y'all soon.